I'm Jeff Klagenberg, CEO of General Orbital, makers of the next generation airships. So the airships that we're going to be building are capable of sustained flight at 60 to 100,000 feet in maintaining a fixed position over the Earth. And they're used to provide, they can be used to provide communication and observation services in lieu of more expensive and often less effective solutions such as satellites. Okay. And these airships also will provide the basis for the best platform for transporting passengers from the Earth's surface to orbit. Okay, there it is. So why would we do this? The market is showing us a growing need for communication systems throughout Asia and other remote places where an existing land-based communication infrastructure simply doesn't exist. And unfortunately, we're also seeing an increasing interest in emergency communication and observation services and security solutions worldwide. And finally, we're also seeing very interesting developments in new markets involving Earth resource mapping with companies like Google, Microsoft, and even now Apple and Yahoo are coming up with products in this space. So our base product, the airship, is capable, as I said, of high altitude flight in either an unmanned or manned configuration and can stay on station for up to 2 years, providing a platform for communication or observation. We've even seen some interest in adventure travel, so high altitude tourism. And we've even had some discussions with one company interested in using an airship for high altitude skydiving. I won't be joining that flight. As a communication observation platform, something the military is referring to as a SkySat, this vehicle can be used for regional communications and has capabilities in terms of disaster or emergency use. If you could imagine what would have happened if this would have been available in post-Katrina New Orleans. It also is usable for events such as the Olympics or Burning Man, where you want to augment communication services. And very interesting to us, it's available as a geosync replacement, where as a permanent replacement for communication services in lieu of a geosync satellite. As a matter of fact, we responded to a proposal from the company Astro Research, which was looking to do exactly this for a city in Japan. And we've submitted that proposal, and that's yet to be awarded. One thing to keep in mind when you think of this as a communication platform, any satellite-based communication payload will work on our platform, but also terrestrial-based communication systems will work because we're close enough to the Earth. So Wi-Fi, cellular phone coverage, those are also available from this vehicle. And finally, in addition to the communication services, there's observation. So it can be used for things such as real-time traffic visualization, Earth resource mapping, or security applications, which can include early wildfire detection or border patrol. And when we talk about regional, we're not talking a small footprint. As you can see, our customers would have access to that could cover San Francisco to LA to Las Vegas. I just wanted to show a couple quick pictures of work that our CTO and co-founder, Dr. Alfred Differ, had worked on, showing airships that had actually been built and manufactured and flown that he worked on. That was a vehicle that had been built as a Battle Lab project, and this is a very early proof of concept flight. Now, the airship is something we'd immediately be going to market, and the space vehicle is a part of our system that would be, that's in design phase now, and we'd be doing R&D and start work in about 5 years on. This is a very unique hybrid of a rocket and airship design. It would launch from 60,000 feet to low Earth orbit, and it has an incredible advantage for carrying passengers. It has a very gentle launch and re-entry characteristic. Passengers would experience no more than 2 Gs of acceleration in a very low vibration environment. Compared to a traditional capsule or glide vehicle re-entry, that would expose passengers to potentially over 5 Gs of acceleration. This just provides a much friendlier experience to people and to potentially delicate equipment. Now, showing how these two vehicles would work together very quickly. Vehicles, I said, would be maintained at 60,000 feet. The airship would be used to lift passengers or payload up to the space vehicle. The space vehicle would then fire its rocket engines, lifting it into orbit. And then when the mission is over, you'd fire a deorbit burn and re-enter landing, quote unquote, at 60,000 feet. If you still had passengers on board at that point, you would use the airship to get them down. So understanding the value, there's current existing markets that we would be tapping into. There's the unmanned aerial vehicle market. That's the security applications that we talked about for military communication and observation. I'm going to go into a little more detail on the competition slide. Satellite services and manufacturing markets, $60 billion and $10 billion market respectively. We would be tapping into part of that market with the geosync replacement idea. So the growth in that satellite manufacturing is expected over the next few years. We'd be able to capture a small percentage of that by replacing those new vehicles with our SkySat configuration. And our airship vehicles are about $10 million a pop. They're far more cost effective than any geosync satellite out there. And finally, the launch services, about $2.8 billion a year. Clearly, most of us believe that there will be growth in the space tourism market on the launch services side, and we fully expect that our space vehicle, with its very good passenger experience, will be able to capture a significant portion of that. So our sales plan that we've built as part of our business plan, we've been very conservative in estimating that we would sell only 20 of the airships, and we've only included the airships in our planning over the next 5 years. At $10 million a vehicle, we have a very large set of prospective customers we can approach with this. The communication service providers such as Astro Research, like I said, or even those providing services for events. Governments for security, emergency, fire detection, applications, border patrol. It's important to note that it's not only national governments that we could be applicable to, but state and even local large city governments. And finally, there's the Earth observation side. As Google, Microsoft try to find ways to make their websites more compelling, one of the areas that we're promoting is the idea of including real-time Earth observation data. So this is a rollout of the bookings projections based on those sales assumptions. I did include in these booking projections estimates for up to 70% discount on the first vehicles to accelerate sales. Cost projections, as you can see, are very reasonable, and these are built assuming, of course, those bookings. In the competition, you have the UAV market. Of course, their next generation vehicles are very interesting. UAVs are very applicable anytime you need high mobility or you need to get close to the ground. But if you're looking at applications such as border patrol or fire detection, where you want permanent installations, an airship that does not require continual control from the ground or the expense of continual expense of fuel is a much better solution. So we expect to capture that portion of the market. And there are, of course, airship and other large aerospace manufacturers that will provide direct competition. I didn't go into detail with them, but basically, most of their products are optimized for low altitude flight, even if being pushed into service at high altitude. So to be cost effective, they would need to redevelop technology similar to ours. And of course, we already have patents pending for the airship and the space vehicle. In fact, we're in the internationalization process for it. The funding we're looking to get is basically to fund the sales and the construction of the demonstration vehicle. And you can see the notes there. With our plan, we'd be cash flow positive in 3 years and have about 20 million cash on hand, accounts receivable after 5. I'll go ahead and, if you have any questions, that's the end of my 1,000-foot view of the company.
Yes. Could you talk about how you're going to satisfy the energy requirements to keep these vehicles in the sky?
The vehicles take advantage of solar power. The nice thing about being an airship is they have a very large surface area for we can deploy on solar power. As a matter of fact, we have about an excess of 1 kilowatt of power to provide to the payload. So we provide the payload not only a platform, but power as well.
How far along are you in your development cycle?
In terms of the final design for the airships we have in place, we've not started construction of the demonstration vehicle. And over the last few months, I've been focusing more on the sales channel. I've been building up a pipeline, in order to get to that first sale. But basically, as soon as we got the first customer turned on, we would go into production unless we get funding.
Can you talk a little bit about the approvals involved in getting something like this off the ground? And what is a launch process? How would you launch one of these things?
Well, these are launched as any other airship would be, in terms of the airship vehicle. And that's actually fairly known. You basically move an airship out of a hangar. You then go up to altitude with the vehicle and then move it into whatever station that you want. It would be flown, the first vehicles would be flown as experimental vehicles under the FAA, and depending on the package, we would either need our customer or we would have to go for FCC approval for transmission if it was a compact payload. So.
At that altitude, are you above the jet stream?
At that altitude, we're above significant winds. That's one of the reasons that we chose that milieu, is that it's, and we could, of course, adjust it appropriate to the application, but we're above significant weather. So one of the challenges airships in the past have had, of course, is at low altitude, they're very sensitive to the weather that can exist. By operating at high altitude, we avoid that.
Jeff, given the recent successes of Bigelow over the last week, I just want to draw the comparison. Limitations, or are there any, of taking the manned aircraft and making or creating that into a permanent LEO station?
Well, in terms of our spacecraft itself, doesn't necessarily bring up a whole lot of mass. It's being built around the idea of actually to support something like Bigelow, but it's not going to be a substitute for a high mass launch vehicle. And obviously in a space station environment, that's what you would want. We definitely see Bigelow as a potential target partner or customer of ours.
I'll ask one more. In terms of your overall funding need, how much do you think is it? And my guess is probably more than the $2 million that you showed in the slide. So where is the rest going to come from? Is it a prepayment?
Yeah, the discussions that I've been going down would be a prepayment with the first customer to get through that first construction. I also, the $1 million in terms of construction would depend on how much prepayment that they would be willing to do.
You haven't said much about the management team.
Well, actually, because I only had 10 minutes, I have to admit I hid the management slide after. Oh, there we go. How do I go to previous? Yeah, can I take me back one? So I'm Jeff Klagenberg, the CEO. My background comes from, in the aerospace community, I worked at Lockheed for about 8 years, did my time there, then jumped into the software startup market with companies like Tellurian, which got acquired by Tibco, and then most recently a company called Cyperion. Dr. Alfred Differ, our CTO and co-founder, dedicated about a decade of his life in terms of aerospace technology, airship technology and space sciences. David King, who is a guy out of Cisco with a great amount of experience in the purchasing and the operations side of the business. And we have the great fortune of having the support of Dr. Art Dula in terms of our executive council, giving us intellectual property and an incredible understanding of space law.